His divine grace, HG Malti Prabhu ki His BPT founder Acharya, His divine loving grace, our Lord and Master Srila Prabhupada ki Anantapuri Vaishnavini ki Rampura Srimad Bhagavatam ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So, somehow or other, I read, none of Nikita did send the correct verses, but somehow or other, I misread the verses. And then just now I looked and I said, oh my God, I got the wrong verses. So now I will do the right verses. And this will be a very interesting, slightly unprepared class. And when I read these two verses, I'm like, there's one tomorrow. I'm going to do both of them today. And tomorrow I'm going to have my own choice of verse. Recently, a couple weeks ago, I was in Grand Rapids, and I had another one of these verses. And when I read the verse, you'll know what I mean by these verses. It seems to be my good fortune to get these special verses here. So, but I mean, hopefully you've all been following the text and understanding the conversation that's going on here. So text 38, it's the third chapter, and it's the third canto and the 31st chapter. Word by word and translation. Balam, the strength. Me, my. Pasya, behold. Maya, Maya. Sri Maya, in the shape of a woman. Jaina, conquers. Disham, all directions. Ya, who. Parati, makes. Pada, prantam, follow at her heels. Ruby, her eyebrows. Rufina, by the movement. Kevalam, merely. Balame Pashyamaya. Balame Pashyamaya. Sri Maya Janodisham. Sri Maya Janodisham. Sri Maya Janodisham. Ya Karuti Pada Pantam. Ya Karuti Yakaroti Padakaranam Yakaroti Padakaranam Rugi Jumbena Kevalam 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 Balam me Pashamaya Balam me Pashamaya Srimaya Janodisham Srimaya Janodisham Yakaroti Padakarantam Yakaroti Padakarantam Rugi Jumbena Kevalam Rugi Jumbena Kevalam
Balam me Pashamaya
Balam me Pashamaya
Srimaya Jainodisham
Srimaya Janodisham
Yakaroti Padakarantam
Yakaroti Padakarantam
Rugi Jumbena Kevalam
Rugi Jumbena Kevalam
Balam me Pashyamaya
Balam me Pashamaya Srimaya Janodisham
Yakaroti Padakrantam
Yakaroti Padakarantam
Jumbena Kevalam
Rugi Jumbena Kevalam
Balam me Pashamaya
Balam me Pashamaya
Srimaya Jainodisham
Srimaya Janodisham
Yakaroti Padakrantam
Yakaroti Padakarantam
Jumbena Kevalam
Rugi Jumbena Kevalam
Balam me Pashamaya
Balam me Pashamaya Srimaya Janodisham Yakaroti Padakarantam Rugi Jumbena Kevalam. Translation. Just try to understand the mighty strength of my mantra. This is already speaking, I think. And just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of a woman who, by the mere movement of her eyebrows, can keep even the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. I think anybody who's a mother, we know how to use those eyebrows. We want to convey things to our family members. You know, ask any kid. The eyebrows can speak volumes. Ask the husband. Purport. There are many instances in the history of the world of the great conquerors being captivated by the charms of a Cleopatra. So in case you don't know, Cleopatra was this drop-dead, gorgeous, beautiful woman who had mighty powers, and certainly her glance and movement of her eyebrows could stop battleships. So kind of a generic term for a powerful, beautiful woman. But one has to study the captivating potency of woman and man's attraction for that potency. From what sources is generated? According to Vedanta Sutra, we can understand that everything is generated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is enunciated there, the first verse in the first canto, first chapter of the Bhagavatam. This means that the Supreme Personality of Godhead are the Supreme Person, Brahman, the Absolute Truth, is the source from whom everything emanates. The captivating power of woman and man's susceptibility to such attraction must also exist in the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the spiritual world and must be represented in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The Lord is the Supreme Person, the Supreme Male. As a common male wants to be attracted by a female, that propensity similarly exists
in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He also wants to be attracted by the beautiful features of a woman. Now the question is, if he wants to be captivated by such womanly attraction, would he be attracted by a material woman? It is not possible. Even persons who are in this material existence can give up womanly attraction if they are attracted by the Supreme Brahman. Such was the case with Haridas Thakur. A beautiful prostitute tried to attract him in the dead of night. But since he was situated in devotional service, and of course everybody knows he was chanting, he was chanting his fixed number of rounds, which was something like 300,000. And she was hired, she was sent by the jealous and foolish rulers of the area to try to bring him down. They're angry with him because what was this guy they were doing, you know? He actually came from a Muslim background, so this caused a lot of mental distress in the minds of the rulers who happened to be Muslim. Let's say, you know, let's just bring him down, and then everybody will see, and you know, give up any notion of following this type of practice. So the beautiful prostitute tried to attract him in the dead of night, but since he was situated in devotional service and transcendental love of Godhead, Haridas Thakur was not captivated. Therefore, rather, he turned the prostitute into a great devotee by his transcendental association. This is not to be imitated. This material attraction, therefore, certainly cannot attract the Supreme Lord. When he wants to be attracted by a woman, he has to create such a woman from his own energy. That woman is Radharani. As explained by the Goswamis, that Radharani is a manifestation of the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the Supreme Lord wants to derive transcendental pleasure, he has to create a woman from his internal potency. Thus, the tendency to be attracted by womanly beauty is natural because it exists in the spiritual world. In the material world, it is pervertedly reflected, and therefore there are so many inebrities. Everybody knows what inebriety means? Okay, it's a good idea, if you don't know what these words mean, to kind of look them up. To get a quick definition to be authoritative, because you could like miss the whole point. Here. So, well, it means like you're stupefied. You may be you need these mean you have some kind of distortion in your thinking, in your mind, not clear thinking. I couldn't find the exact definition, but that's what it is. So many these things that are off course, out of kilter. So that's the material world, the perverted reflection. Instead of being attracted by material, but I do recommend keep a dictionary, like they're on these little things, and you'll have these practically you just get born with them in your hand. Just like Karna was born with ears. Nowadays you're born with a device in your hand almost, you know. So it seems that way. But check out, look up when there's a word, and just don't pass over it. Look it up, because you'll suddenly find yourself finding a deeper understanding. Prabhupada didn't just randomly put these words here. He told us he thought very carefully and chose each word very carefully. So, you know, sometimes the tendency is just to pass over it. And I mean, I realized myself at a certain point I was doing that. And that was before devices. There was, they had this thing called a dictionary, a thing called a book, had pages on them, open them up. And, you know, once I started looking up, I found out that there was much more than I was actually getting by knowing what each and every word meant. So instead of being attracted by material, the word that got me, I was reading it, is the pernicious effects of an age of folly. How many times have I read that? One time I read, what does that mean? Because age of folly, so it's probably not going to mean something good, but what does it mean? And it means deadly. So when you read it like that, it's not only not good, it's deadly. Instead of being attracted by material beauty, one is accustomed to be attracted by the beauty of Radharani and Krishna. Then the statement of Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishta Nivartate, holds true. When one is attracted by the transcendental beauty of Radha and Krishna, he is no longer attracted by material feminine beauty. That is the special significance of Radha Krishna worship. This is testified to by Acharya. He says, since I have become attracted by the beauty of Radha and Krishna, when there is attraction for a woman, our memory is sex like with a woman. I at once spit on it, and my face turns in disgust. First, we had one devotee, the god sister, and she kind of proudly said to Prabhupada, whenever I think about sex, I just spit. Prabhupada looked at her and said, first become free from sex desire, then you can spit. So Yamuna Acharya, it was attraction and repulsion. It's the same. So Yamuna Acharya, he was freed from any desire for mundane association or mundane activities. And he saw them, therefore, with this he could spit on it. But it wasn't like because he was actually desiring it. He saw how he saw it for what it was. So when we are attracted by Madana Mohan and the beauty of Krishna and his consorts, so not only attracted by Krishna but by his beautiful consorts, then the shackles of conditioned life, namely the beauty of the material woman, cannot attract us. So the translation, just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya, in the shape of woman, who by the mere movement of her eyebrows, and keeping the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. And I'm going to read through 39 so that we don't miss something, because tomorrow I'll take another verse of my choice. So 39, Samgana Kuriya Kamavasha Datu Yogashya Paramarama Rukshu Matsirya Patilam Tatmalavo Padantiya Ramasya. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman. For such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. So, particularly cheerful expression that can cause great conflict in the minds of both men and women, if not properly understood. So, let's purport. The culmination of yoga is full Krishna consciousness. This is affirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. A person who is always thinking of Krishna and devotion is the topmost of all yogis. And in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also stated that when one becomes freed from material combination by rendering devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can at that time understand the science of God. Here the word Pati-lab Dhamma Lapa occurs. Atma means self, and Lapa means gain. Generally, conditioned souls have lost their Atma or self, but those who are transcendentalists have realized the self. It is directed at such a pure, realized soul who aspires to the topmost platform of yogi perfection, should not associate with young women. In the modern age, however, there are so many rascals who recommend that while one has genitals, he should enjoy women as much as he likes, and at the same time, he can become a yogi. In no standard yoga system is the association of women accepted. It is clearly stated here that the association of women is a gateway to hellish life. The association of women is very much restricted in the Vedic civilization. Out of the four social divisions, brahmacharya, jnana, and the sannyas, three orders are strictly prohibited from the association of women. Only three pastors, our householders, are given license to have an intimate relationship with a woman, and that relationship is also restricted, forbidding from begetting nice children. If, however, one wants to stick to continued existence in the material world, he may indulge in female association unrestrictedly. Namo Buddhaya Krishna Prasaya Buddhaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Gauravaani Krishna Sundari Pasatya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shivasati Gauravaani Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. So we have a few minutes to think about a very vast topic. Because Sister Vishaka Devi wrote a very nice essay. Maybe some of you read this, What's It Going to Do? You read that, you know? A reflection on women's services in Srila Prabhupada's Hare Krishna movement. You think about what Srila Prabhupada did. He transplanted an entire culture from one age and one millennium to a different age and a different millennium. And while he left the message of that culture intact, he also had to make cultural practice, make the culture practical and appealing to young people who had no orientation to that culture. When you've heard how he got off, you've read the poem that he wrote before he stepped off the Jaladita. Somehow or other you brought me here. You know, somehow or other you could see, you know, even before he got off the ship, you could understand he was facing an upward current. The current was going, he was going to be going against the current of the time. We didn't have any orientation, we didn't have a culture of our own. In fact, whatever so-called culture we had, we rejected because it was worth rejecting. There was no culture. And we were accustomed to so many things which were contrary to any advancement in spiritual life. And contrary to the mood of the day, from the beginning, Srila Prabhupada was urging his students to follow these principles, to get married and to be responsible. And we accepted his directives because by his example, we were convinced that by doing so, we could progress spiritually. That was our impetus. We weren't thinking about stress or anything else. We wanted to make spiritual advancement. It suddenly became attractive by the appearance and the message of the pure devotee Srila Prabhupada. At the same time, there are some we call slightly uncomfortable and controversial statements about women that we find in scriptural verses and in Srila Prabhupada's writing. Like the ones we read today. All the time say it. Prabhupada writes, a man's psychology and a woman's psychology are different. I think that's kind of understood. I don't know, a few decades ago, some book came out. Everybody was grabbing that book. I've actually never seen it, but it was really popular, including among devotees. It was some women are from Venus, men are from Mars, something like that, but the idea was there was a difference in the psychological nature. And this was at a time when it was really being pushed and shoved at the equality. Just the difference, the psychology. And in so many ways. Prabhupada wrote, the natural instinct is that the husband will want to post himself as superior to the wife. And this must be observed. So how do we deal with that? I'll put one word, intelligently. Because it's a fact. Nobody likes to be pushed. Even women push down. But we're more able to navigate the current than a man who's being pushed down. And this is a psychological fact. For example, even Karmis can get this. In the New York Times, big Karmi newspaper, full of nonsense. But it was 2017, and the Chancellor of Germany, at that time since 2005, now it's like about 12 years, her name was Angela Merkel. And they noted that she had spent her political career downplaying her gender. She did not attach herself to the feminist label. And she was modest, she was cautious, diligent preparation, as opposed to being like in your face, And in honoring the male-female psychology, her leadership, although she was right, she was their chancellor, was also invisible because she painstakingly built consensus behind the scenes and avoided claiming credit for the ideas she originated. In other words, she'd get one of the men who were in the government, under her. She'd inject the idea into them, and then, they would produce it as if it was their own idea. And she never said, hey, wait, I told you that. Oh, that came from you. No, she pushed it forward. So then that way she was actually able to lead nicely without having large amounts of pushback. Of course, later that's okay. But that's one way that you can deal with the male psychology tendency to dominate. And it's possible for women to teach and lead men, just like the Nagapadnis. They did with Kalia, and the Brahmin wife did with her husband. And one god sister, Shaniti, it was actually one of the first lady disciples from India, and but she joined her in America. She had a hard time because her husband was not appreciative really of the practices. Although he would come, he would give a donation, but during the class or lecture, he'd go out and have a cigarette. And there were other things, and he really didn't want her to be coming and associating with the devotees on a regular basis. I hope nobody here has that problem. So at one point, she wrote to Prabhupada, and no, she came to see him, and she was, like, what to do? What to do? And Prabhupada said, you see the ear? You can't see the ear. Anybody can see the ear in your own face if you don't look in a mirror. She said, but this ear, it's very powerful. Just a little tug and the whole, the whole head follows. So it's kind of giving her in direct instruction how to influence her husband. Not that she should grab his ear, but and she tried. She was an amazingly sincere soul. She tried, and it was so funny. She wrote him a letter, and even devotees were telling her just leave him, But she wrote to Prabhupada, why can't I join the temple like all the other ladies? Why am I being forced to be in this terrible situation? She was pleading with him, please, I want to go to the temple also. She wanted to get out of the hellish environment she was in. Finally, Prabhupada relented and he told her, okay, he said, but you will eventually have to get married. Because he didn't think, they would accept her as this Indian lady at that time. This is in the, early 70s. An unmarried Indian lady that wouldn't be deemed respectable. And she joined him. She was such a blissful person. Anybody who came around her was feeling blissful. And she became like a real firecracker, but just fear. She was fearless. Eventually, Krishna arranged a nice Krishna consciousness for her. And in Florida, and how many have been to Alaska where they have these itchy-tucky springs and you can go down on it, floating on the springs? And a lot of times it's a pastime and devotees will get together and the ladies will go on sometimes groups of men separately, float down the springs and chant. It's a nice pastime. She was there with the ladies, and she was always talking about how the Itchy-tucky River reminded her of the Yamuna, because she was from Victoria. And she was there going down the river, and she suddenly left her body. For her, it was Yamuna, she was chanting. Anyway, Prabhupada explains that the system is that the husband is a spiritual master to the wife, but if the wife can bring her husband into practicing the position, that's all right. Then the husband can, this is in a letter from Prabhupada, if the husband can bring the wife in practicing, so the wife wants to be a devotee, it doesn't happen. But if she can bring the husband in, then the husband accepts the wife as a spiritual master. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that anyone who knows the science of Krishna, that person should be accepted as a spiritual master regardless of their so-called material qualifications, such as rich, poor, male, female, or Brahmana, or Sudra. This is a letter of 69 to Shilari Devidasi, who is now associated with Brahman. So, in Prabhupada affirms like the wives of the Nagapatnis, the wives of the Brahmins, they were the qualified ones. Because we know the Brahmins refused to give Krishna Balaram anything. But, what do we need yajna? Get out of here. And the wives were preparing for the yajna as their service to their husbands. Oh, Krishna Balaram, we're hungry, here, take. Didn't think at all about any artificial imposition. Immediately, just take. And Krishna was grateful to these wives of the Brahmanas. As if Lady Krishna was grateful. So we're going to hear a few statements in letters and lectures and experience from Srila Prabhupada. As far as boys and girls lecturing in the morning, that doesn't make any difference. Either boy or girl devotees may lecture if they choose to do so. We have no such bodily designations, male or female. Krishna consciousness is on the spiritual platform. It was October 68 to Shamadasi. And then, I didn't have time to get these in order like date-wise, so it's a little skipping. But this following one, these women are not ordinary women. They are preachers, they are Vaishnavas. By their association, one becomes a Vaishnava. 1974, March. This was in Calcutta. I've probably told this story before. There was a lot of pushback coming on the ladies living in the temple. And honestly, it was an awkward situation. Just the place wasn't constructed to be as a temple with 2 ashrams within the temple. So the ladies were up on the roof. We had these like mosquito nets sort of things rigged up. We were up on the roof, and there was one downstairs. The men they didn't even really have a room. There was this hall, and it was the Prasadam hall, and they would sleep there. There was a room for Sri Prabhupada, and that had an attached bath. The only other bath was common, and we all had to use it. And it had 2 doors, one on each side, because to get to the roof, you had to walk through this bathroom. And it included a toilet and a bathtub. It was like a bridge of old. If you've ever been to Albert Road in Calcutta, you know it's the same building. There's been some reconstruction now, but you'd go through there, and then there was a big, huge tank that you had to remember to fill up with water, because the water would only run for certain times. And so just that dynamic, had to walk through one space to get up to the women's and the doors on each side. Somebody would inevitably forget to lock the door, or they forget to unlock it. Either way, you'd be stuck. And somebody would walk in, like a lady was bathing or a male was bathing. Oh God, it was awkward. So the men had this idea how to fix it. And it wasn't through, maybe making some adjustment in the way the building was built. It was get rid of the women. That was how they were going to fix the problem. And they were very serious about it, And they're young men, and trying to be brahmacharis, trying in some cases to be sannyasis. So, you can't disregard their situation. Get rid of the women. They had no plan where we were supposed to go. Like one time, Tamal Krishna was on me, put them all, send all the women, you get another fix. Send all the women to Australia. Because at that point in time, you could get free passage to Australia. They were trying to populate the country. So, yeah, put them on the boat and send us all to Australia. That would fix the problem. Tamal Krishna was sent to China. Anyway, but Krishna's arrangement, these wonderful things came out of that. Anyway, so one day on the morning walk, the boys decided they were going to tell Sri Prabhupada their plan. Here's the idea, here's how we'll fix that problem. Now, myself, Shali, and Palika, we never went on the morning walk because we stayed behind, dressed the deities, cleaned the temple, and I Prabhupada's cook. We had to get all this stuff done before he came back. And we would know when he was coming back because you'd hear his cane. The steps are now marbleized, but never wouldn't. We could hear his cane coming up the steps. So then we rushed to the door, we opened the door, and we'd be standing there. So that morning, we're standing there, we didn't know that that talk had gone on about getting rid of women, so apparently they're making their case. And Prabhupada said nothing the entire walk. Usually going to be a little engagement, said nothing, just kept walking. Now they're coming up the stairs, and we're at the top smiling with their folded hands, and suddenly he stops. He picks up his cane, and he looks, points to the men. But if you associate with these women, you go back to Godhead. These women are not ordinary women, they're preachers of Vaishnavas. By their association, one becomes a Vaishnava. 1972, New York City, there was, men had another idea, like, is anybody here able to just sit down and chant your japa without any disturbances coming into your mind? Like totally offenseless, pure japa. Anybody here able to do that? Well, neither were these young people. And so the young boys thought the reason they couldn't fix their mom was because there were women in the temple chanting japa too. So they had a plan. Guess what their plan was? Get the women out of the temple. They can go somewhere else. This is like New York City, Lower East Side. You have to come out in the street with all the drunks. Anyways, here's Prabhupada, and he read this to Prabhupada. Who has introduced these things? That women cannot have chanting japa in the temple? They cannot perform arti and so many things? If they become agitated, then let the brahmacharis go to the forest. I have never introduced these things. Brahmacharis cannot, if the brahmacharis cannot remain in the presence of women in the temple, then they may go to the forest, but not remain in New York City, because in New York there are so many women. So how will they avoid seeing them? Best thing is to go to the forest for not seeing the women, because they became so easily agitated. But then no one will see them, and then how will our preaching work go on? We have to remember Bhagavad Gita 10:34. Anybody remember that one? Among women, I'm fame, fortune, speech, memory, intelligence, faithfulness, and patience. So Krishna has some nice things to say about ladies, she's just there. At one point when Prabhupada first started introducing the concept of the taking an exam, Bhakti Shastri exam, some people like, well, can the women do this? So maybe we have a problem with women do this. Regarding your question about the examination to be given, it hadn't even happened yet, the girls will also be able to take these. In Krishna consciousness, there's no distinction between girls and boys. The girls may also become preachers if they're able. In another letter to Bhakti and Jennifer, we are Vaishnavas. We're not concerned with male or female position in life. That is simply bodily concept of life. It is not spiritual. Whether one is male or female, it doesn't matter. Simply chant Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
And follow the formula of the principles, and your life will be perfect. Now, there's a little backstory to this letter. Jennifer was having a hard time deciding whether to be male or female. Sound familiar nowadays? It's like, God, it's so crazy nowadays. You can't even say he, she, or, it's like you gotta get all these new pronouns, and if you get it wrong, then the person's offended. And it's pretty difficult just being anything nowadays. So Jennifer's having this problem. So in other words, some things are just since time immemorial. And she wrote to Prabhupada. And so that was part of the, the answer. There was another part that he told her, like, it really doesn't matter, just choose one, male or female, and then stick to it. It was so beautifully practical. It was just pushing on the point. Getting all this stuff at them. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are spirit, soul, heart, and torso. You are, just get that message through, and everything will be all right. There's been, since time immemorial, conflict between husbands and wives. I mean, here we are. I'm sure everything's always just smooth. Nobody has conflict, right? I mean, honestly, it would be pretty boring if it was always that way. Look what Krishna was like trying to pick a fight with me because she was so like, you want a little spice. So we're not talking like, beating up or being mean, just, a little argumentation for the sake of a little spice in life. But, on a serious level, Prabhupada had to address these issues with conflicts between men and women. And it wasn't always pretty. In one letter, he wrote to God's sister, if your husband cannot follow our principles properly, you are not to think that you should let that hamper your spiritual life. You should stay with us and cultivate spiritual life peacefully under Krishna's protection and care. If he's not interested in spiritual life, let him do as he pleases. He was a real rogue. I mean, we're not talking lightweight, he was a rogue. I have given all my disciples instructions to follow for making spiritual advancement. But if they don't have the desire to follow, what can I do? Anyone who's unwilling to follow our regulated principles, he should not live or associate closely with such a person. That's a pretty heavy statement. But it's also clear what our mission is. Another God's sister, her husband was such a heavy hammer. I mean, he was heavy to his wife, he was heavy to the devotees, men and women. And he had this ability, he was a fantastic artist, he could create things. He just recently died, so maybe you can say his name, but I won't. But, he had this wonderful creative ability, but he had this other destructive side. And his wife, this young girl, she was in such despair, and I witnessed that other side, both to the wife and to other devotees. I saw him push a brahmachari down the staircase once because the guy wasn't walking fast enough, and he wanted to. He just pushed him down. This was a steep staircase. It was in Londonderry Place. Anyways, she got in such despair, she was contemplating suicide. Unfortunately, she didn't act upon that contemplation. She went to Prabhupada. And he told her, your body is not for someone else's pleasure. He gave her permission to leave, to leave that person. And that was not something Prabhupada took lightly, but at the same time, he didn't take it lightly, that his female disciples should be abused by their husbands. One time in India, there was a lady who came to me and she told me her husband was physically pounding her. And it was always in the kitchen for some reason. And the other ladies in that temple were saying, just tolerate. And I'm like, that's not what Prabhupada said. No, but, first you try to get some help. Anyways, they told her she shouldn't tell anybody and she should just tolerate. So, as I said, it was always in the kitchen. And she asked my advice. I didn't know what to say. I said, pick up a pan and something doesn't. I didn't know what to say. It's just like that. But she did it. And the husband was so shocked. He was so shocked. It was like, now they use that word woke. Like that woke him up. And, I was not. But generally, you can't pull that off. Husband's stronger. Another God's sister whose husband was doing the same thing. And finally, she'd gone through the tolerating. She went for having counseling. He wouldn't go because he thought everything he did was so perfect and so good, including being his wife. And now sometimes women don't push buttons. I'm not saying all women, we don't, we're not always angels, let's be honest. You can push buttons, and women really do have to learn how to correctly interact with her husband to avoid pushing the button, which may result in, the husband losing control. But this was not the case here. And finally she told him, if you hit me one more time, I'm gonna call the police. This is a devoted community, Alachua, like everybody knows everything about everybody. And they live together, in close proximity. He did it again, and she called the police, and right in the middle of the day, he's taking out handcuffs so everybody could see this. And he had a job at a very respectable outside in the medical field. Had a job, this was really embarrassing. And the thing about it was, it woke him up. He suddenly saw himself for what it was, that he was an aggressive, abusive person. And he begged forgiveness from his wife, his daughter, and he took the steps needed to correct himself. So sometimes you have to act in such a way to, sometimes a kid is getting out of control, you just grab them, you shake them a little bit, come on, catch their attention. Sometimes it has to be. In Krishna book, in the story about delivering the life of the Brahmanas, Krishna said, just see how fortunate these women are who have so devotedly dedicated their lives to the Supreme Personality, the Godhead Krishna. They surpassed us in firm faith. And this is the Brahmanas, after their wives gave and they saw how Krishna was. So they surpassed all of us in firm faith and devotion unto Krishna. In the 23rd chapter of Krishna book. In a letter to Himavadi, Prabhupada wrote, in India, all the acharyas and their descendants later on acted only from the man's side. The wives were at home because that is the system from old times, that women are not required to go out. But in Bhagavad Gita, we find that women are equally competent like the men in the matter of Krishna consciousness. That is a Krishna consciousness movement. Please, therefore, carry on these missionary activities and prove it by practical example. So this is to a lady, letter to a lady, everybody. Please carry on these missionary activities and prove it by practical example that there are no bar. There is no bar for anyone in the matter of preaching work in Krishna consciousness. In the Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 26th chapter, 16, in purport, maybe it's in the absolute translation, there is no difference between a good wife and good intelligence. So, we have these dynamics such as women as a gateway to hell, hellish life, and those. Try not to become confused or disturbed by these statements, because these statements are referring to non-devotee ladies, and Prabhupada has made it very clear, and I hope that I've shared some of that clarity with you. One other time Prabhupada spoke about these kind of statements because men were taking advantage of it as a whole. And he goes, he said, don't take advantage of this to mistreat the women. They are sent by Krishna. We must treat everyone, including the women who come here, very nicely. I've not heard any bad things here, and I hope I never do. Prabhupada, in an interview in Seattle, it was in 68, he said, love is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness, and love is the basic principle of all of our activities. So love is there, but it's dormant. But that love is not being properly utilized. So this Krishna consciousness movement to revive the original love and the original person that's in that loving transaction can be executed. That's our mission, that's our goal. And we should try to avoid becoming too much involved in bodily designation. And if we as ladies feel offended by some of the statements, our offense is basically because we're identifying as female. So then I'm offended. You know, there's equally strong statements regarding men. We could go down there that route too, in the Bhagavatam and others. But most of the time, if we just like don't allow ourselves to become like shocked or reactive, we can actually see there's some, the statement is really aimed at non-devoted. We're speaking to non-devotees, about non-devotees, and you can say, wow, well, that's still pretty harsh. But, you know, sometimes you have to speak strongly to get something through. And speaking the truth is one of the things Prabhupada excelled at. And it would be eye-opening. And because he was truthful, we felt secure to follow him. One of the reasons that I compiled a bond of love, Srila Prabhupada and his daughters, was to show the experiences of women with Srila Prabhupada, and to show that other side, because most of the time we're hearing from the side of the men. But why would, you know, the Prabhupada had about 1,700 and 1,750 lady disciples, something like that. Some of them were pretty highly educated, actually. Why would such persons stay if he felt mistreated and abused? That was not how we were treated, and that's not how we felt as Srila Prabhupada. And when we read the statements, we tried to see, do I fit that category? Here's a category that can be detrimental to your spiritual life. Am I in that category? Prabhupada has given us the door out for all of us. So, I think we're over time. But he encouraged all of us to work with our fullest and highest potential. So I'll end with a beautiful report from 7/5/12. Everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord. You know this report? It's so beautiful. Everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord. Everyone should praise another's service to the Lord and not be proud of our own service. This is the way of Vaishnava thinking, Vaikuntha thinking. There may be rivalries and apparent competition between servants and performing service, but in the Vaikuntha planets, the servant of another servant is appreciated, not condemned. This is Vaikuntha competition. There's no question of enmity between servants. Everyone should be allowed to render service to the Lord to the best of his ability, and everyone should appreciate the service of others. Such are the activities of Vaikuntha. Since everyone is a servant, everyone is on the same platform and allowed to serve the Lord according to his ability. In the spiritual world, there is no distinction. And there is where the real equality is, that we're all servants of the Supreme Lord. Anybody else would like to add any? I mean, there's a lot more that could be. I just tried to get a few things together quickly when I realized that maybe I had to do them first. If anybody would like to add something or have some particular question. Or if you want to escape and take Prashadam, I don't blame you. So, and those who are taking rest can wake up now.
Thank you, Malti Prabhu. It was a very nice class. Thank you for giving us so much insight about Srila Prabhupada always encouraging women. When it comes to new people who read and attend classes and are
Keep it up because I can't hear you otherwise.
When it comes to new people who are taking guidance and hearing these classes and these statements, they do not go over. They are not non-devotees. So as people who are in trying to guide them, what should be our move and how should we, should we divert the topic? How should we go about it?
With empathy, be a little emphatic. I can see how this might be confusing to you. If you're convinced, you'll be able to convince others. That's really all I can say about that topic, in terms of, but I understand your dilemmas. But if you're convinced, if you're a happy devotee, if you have experienced in your Krishna consciousness, why would you, if you weren't happy in Krishna consciousness and you were finding Krishna consciousness to be abusive, and why would you want to invite someone else? You wouldn't. So obviously there's something there that you're experiencing, so share that. You can also tell them about a bond of love. And there's another practical example. Take a scale, those scales you hold up. So put all these heavy statements on one side and then put everything else on the other side. It's like, you can't even, it's such a fraction. But that fraction is there, it causes confusion, and we have to learn how to address it. But it's not through argument, and it's not through sweeping them under the rug and say, yeah, that's there, but look at this is also here. Here's what the experience is, here's what my experience has been. It doesn't say mistreat women, So, but of course that happened because people were not, able to see this distinction. And you could direct such persons to the Vaishnavi, ISKCON Vaishnavi ministry on Facebook. That site on Facebook, it's open to everybody. It's ISKCON Vaishnavi ministry, and there are so many. In fact, Vishaka's essay is there. There's so many other ones, and you'll see so many examples of current day ladies who are excelling in Krishna consciousness. Because when you start saying, well, we talk about like the Janavas and the, people in the past, the Ganga Matas, and and it's like, there's current wonderful present examples. Right here's a room full of them, So it's not something unattainable. And we should press on that point. What does material life mean? What is the antithesis of material life? Is spiritual life. Here, take this free pass. That's what we're offering. That's the proper gift to us. And above all, you don't have to apologize. I think people apologize for problem. Excuse me. Because that's not just try to understand. And most people, when they remove themselves from the identification of being the body and read, they have enough intelligence to understand what's being presented for what it is.
Many devotees are in Zoom. Could you ask them if they have any questions or anything they want to ask?
How do I find out?
Sorry, Prabhu.
Devotees in Zoom, does anyone want to share or ask any question?
Thank you. That's it.
You want to tolerate you? Hare Krishna.
HG Malti Prabhu ki
Jai. Divine Grace Sri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
That's
Devotees, We have evening program at 7:30, again by HG Malti Prabhu. We don't want to miss this opportunity to hear from such an exalted pure devotee. So please come and join at 7:30.
Is it for ladies or everybody?
For everyone.
Okay. Somehow I heard less.